Hey, good morning, friends. Good to see you, one and all. Welcome to this the 28th day of November in 2020. I'm just 2 days away from my 54th birthday. Believe it or don't. I don't know what that says, other than I'm old and I dislike the aging process. I have unfriended it on Facebook, so we got that going, which is nice. Hey, Steve Federo and Sue Finale and Candace and Young Love and Joe Ray and Mustard Seed and Mojo Shop and Josh and Beth Martins and Rocker Chick and Billingtano and Informally Hip and Tom and Under the Ether and Liz and all. Did I miss? Oh, Michelle. I'm missing a lot of people. I know it for sure. But hey, welcome. It's great to see you here this morning, as always. And we have reached almost the end of another season. In fact, coming up on not quite a year, I guess, for Unintended Consequences. Well, although it first began. Well, thank you for the happy birthday. Not quite yet, but coming soon. But let's see. So the premise of this whole thing began with the Awakening Project, which I first announced after a conversation had with Wayne McCroy, Jason Lindgren, Crow 777, among others, about this idea of trying to quantify what make that. Why is it that some people seem to awaken from this dystopian nightmare to the truth and others do not? And what makes the difference, and also what happened, and is there any way we can undo this? So this premise began. A number of you, over 300, pushing 400 now over time, have engaged in this. And while I had intended, again, the original intentions was it would probably be a 3-4 month project, things happened. And of course, we began this podcast because one of the things that occurred from that was simply that one of the primary indicators, or at least one of the things that was corollary throughout nearly every one of the respondents, was the sense of being isolated and alone, that we have become ostracized from society based on, both the way we see it, which is very different. We see that suddenly the nature of the illusion, and that it is deception that drives deception into fear that drives most people. And when you see that, you're no longer afraid and you're no longer deceived. And then you try to share that with other people and they don't want to be told that they're doing it wrong and that things are not the way that it seems. And so there's mutual frustration, them with you, because you're telling them something they don't want to hear, and you with them because you're trying to tell them the truth because you care about them, not because you want them to hate on you, right? So this causes, again, a number of changes in every one of your relationships. A conversation we had with Beth Martins last week about the nature of what happens when those changes occur and what to do about it. Throughout this process, again, I've been trying to quantify some of this data into a format that's easily presentable, something that's easy to digest. And in so doing, again, I will fully admit that I'm not proud of it, but I've gotten behind with a lot of areas in my life, including this. I'm still working on the process, of course, but putting it into charts and graphs it takes a lot of efforts in trying to find a way to explain some of the things, and then to keep up this process of doing this every week. And part of it, again, is to create this sense of community, which is lost if I just get back into the numbers. So I'm trying to do a bit of both. But this creates a situation where, like today, I wanted to represent some of the things that came out of this research. And it's not really in a format that I can show you all the background information. And it leaves me in an awkward sense because there's two things, I guess, opposing sides that come out of this. One is I never want to be in a position of simply saying, hey, this is the thing, trust me, believe me on this, right? Because I don't have all the backing evidence to show you what this looks like. On the other hand, I guess, again, I would never want that. I would never want anybody just to simply accept something because I said so, because, again, that defeats the purpose, I think, of discernment, is that you need to find out for yourself what works and what the truth seems to be. And so, as always, my intention is to aggressively adjure you to go find this information for yourself, but to hopefully point you in the right direction and go, this is where you may find some of that information, or at least these are some questions you might ask. And I'm finding, again, as I move into phase 2 of this project, and ultimately phase 3 is to try to, not only better understand what's happened and what's occurred, but to try to do a deprogramming script if possible. And most of that so far seems to be in the nature of asking questions, getting people to engage their thought process and get out of the cognitive dissonance that is put in. Because when people get triggered, one thing that's certain about that is that there is a trigger that's put there. It's intentional. So when you see people get triggered, that's by design. Somebody put a trigger there that needs to be released. It creates tension, and that tension needs to be released, and they get triggered. So that's placed there. It's not organic. It did happen. So moving along in this is that some of the things that I see have to do with the way this has been foisted upon us and the nature of how it's occurred. And you've heard me say this before if you've spent some time here, all right, that it appears that most people are under what I would call a spell, a hypnotic spell, if you will. They are unable to see reality, in part because they have so completely given over and adjudicated their will to another that they no longer are able, and they're no longer comfortable in accepting their own belief system, all right, other than what's been given to them. So they no longer trust their own judgment, and probably for good reason. But we're told over and over that you're incapable of it. You must trust the guys in the white lab coats. In what we look at here, right, is something that Rose 777 and I do twice a week, right, is to do the Poppycock Show, in which we break down what you see in the news and often what their perceived intention is. This is what they're trying to get out of it. We see a number of these things in terms specifically of the Hegelian dialect, in that they're creating problem, reaction, solution, and creating a false dichotomy that you should fight your neighbor, that anyone believes or sees things differently than you is suddenly your mortal enemy. And therefore, you must fight them for all you're worth. All right. So, as part of this, one of the things that I wanted to present to you today is this idea of change. Let me bring this up here, and I'm going to kind of walk through a little bit of this. Is this idea of change? So knowing that words have meaning, of course, it's to make someone or something different, to alter or modify. You're causing, it's the causative effect that causes change. And that's actually the basis of science, right, is the cause and effect relationship. A scientific experiment must have an independent and dependent variable, right? And so the hypothesis is your understanding of what causes the change. So it's the causative effect. Also, change is to replace something with something else, right? Especially of the same kind or newer or better, to substitute. And this, I think, very well encapsulates what we see in the way Crow 777 says, transmuting, right, the world into an artificially based reality. And I think this is something that you can very clearly see around you, that since there is no lie in nature, in order to take over this world and be the complete master of it, they try to artificially induce something that is not real, this virtual world around you that exists only in your mind. It's that they can control, because they cannot really truly control nature. They can affect it, and perhaps change it, but they cannot truly control or be the god of it. This leads to what Alvin Toffler called, let's go through this idea of change, that change creates, it alters a person. And for much of human history, change was not something that was easily embraced. In fact, if you look at certain timelines, and again, don't trust me on this, you can go back and see a variety of them that show, according to the Scaligerrian timeline, there was nothing that went on for about 800 years. I think that's poppycock, and I think you know it, and that they have lied to us about what it looks like. But we do know in some ways that many things stayed the same in terms of the agrarian society and people who grew crops and husband animals for their own use. And then there was some exchange with other people who did different things, and this created sort of economy. And then all of a sudden, in the late 1600s, in the early 1700s, you began to see what they now call the Industrial Revolution, is that more people began working on something as a means to pay for these other things rather than direct barter, or rather than their own use. They began to work for some fiat currency. At the time, it wasn't necessarily all fiat. Much of it was backed by precious metals, but it was for an item. You began to trade time for currency, and then use that currency as a commodity to buy something else. And this led now into, again, what we now call the post-industrial revolution, or the information age, in which information is the highest form of commodity. It's the new gold, right? So it's the new oil. So this information. All right, so what we have here, right, is this sort of long confluence of change and to alter the way the human mind works. And one of the things that becomes very clear is that change creates effect in the psyche of the human mind because things are no longer what they once were. And you've often heard of the expression, the 5 stages of grief. But those were initially called the 5 stages of change, because we undergo a grieving process when things change. You have to address it and there's a learning curve. You have to learn the new thing. You have to let go of the old thing, and it becomes a part of your past. And all that implies. So there comes a time when this change, even if a positive change, and this has been showed in every psychological research going back through, again, certainly the late 1600s, is that the process of change, even a very positive one, creates stress in the human psyche, and that stress then must be relieved. So whether that is getting a better job, getting into a good relationship, getting married, buying a house, any of these things that could be considered a positive occurrence creates an immense amount of stress. Certainly negative things that we perceive to be negative or not the way we wanted, also create stress. But every change creates an enormous amount of stress. And they have known, at least since the late 1800s, of this increasing amount of change causing a psychosis, really, a break from reality in the human condition, because we have 2 ways, really, of approaching this. We can go into escapism and try to run away from it, right? Or we can go into artificial control, and we try to take control where we do not have it, and to express power or control over a situation so we feel better about it, because you feel a loss of control when things change. So one of the things that, let's bookmark that for a moment. One of the things that I learned that was a powerful learning lesson for me during the study to become a counselor, right, was making an inventory and a list about the stressors in your life. What are the things that are causing you stress? And what things do you not like? And so as you go down this list and you try to, keep it to something reasonable, like under 100, right? And get it down to that top 30, top 10 if you can. And then you look at what those things are. And then you sort those into things you can do something about, and things that you could do a little bit about, things you can do nothing about. What you quickly find out is that a very large portion, probably again following that Pareto distribution of 80-20, is that 80% of the things on your list you can't do anything about. There's very little, and I'd say maybe 70% is things you could do nothing about, maybe 10% is stuff you can do a little bit about, and 20% is stuff you can do something about. Quickly you learn that you should not give any, that would be 0, absolutely none of your emotional energy to those things that you could do nothing about, which comprises the vast majority of your life. Things you can't do anything about. Even the things that you can do very little about, you can do very little about. It's the things that you can do something about, right, that should take the majority of your attention. That would be at least 80% of your attention. There's the 80-20 rule. And then you can change your life for the better. But again, when you realize that most of the things in your life, there's nothing you can do about it, right? Most of the time what you find is that when you stress over things that are coming, You cannot affect those things by worrying about it. All you can do is worry about it. And so, it's been said that worrying about something doesn't make tomorrow any less worrisome. It simply steals your today. And there is truth in that. That most often, when you stress over things that are upcoming, you cannot, you cannot do anything about it. And it is often it's often not nearly as bad as you imagine, because in the absence of evidence, we always go to the worst case scenario. And so we imagine the worst possible thing occurring. And it's usually just not that bad. However, bad things do happen, and that's for certain. But stressing over it doesn't usually mitigate or change those things. Again, all you can do is to focus on the things that you can do something about. And this is why I say, yes, right? So fuck the fucking fuckers. There you go, Nemo. But this is why, again, I often say that trying to change the world is a large, in fact, perhaps impossible proposition. But you can change the world around you. So you can focus on those things within your control that you can do something without trying to exert control where it does not belong to you. And having good boundaries is very important to that. Understanding where you end and other people's responsibilities begin, right? Understanding what the nature of that is very healthy for your personal emotional well-being. So we get to this place where, again, change begins to take place at a rate that the mind cannot quite wrap itself around completely. And this creates undue stressors, right, that was initially called industrial disease. And again, known about since at least the 1860s, we began to codify this and call it industrial disease. At least as early as 1900 through 1905, it was actually given a name, industrial disease. And it was used to describe a number of different physiological and psychological issues, including shortness of breath and, stress of all kinds. And then it became, Dire Straits song in 1982. Sorry. So industrial disease. It was talked about through the 1940s, whenever after World War I and begin the efforts of World War II, the idea of being shell-shocked, what we would call now post-traumatic stress disorder, appearing in soldiers that were engaged in trench warfare during World War I. And this post-traumatic stress disorder, again, expressed itself in a variety of physiological ways, even though it was a psychological issue. And it caused many people, hey, Bunny, how you doing, man? So it caused many people to become physiologically as well as psychologically broken due to the incredible stress. And so what we see here is a corollary event into high stress creating psychological challenges because a person cannot adjust quickly enough, and it creates and induces these 5 stages of, what we would call the 5 stages of grief, essentially, right? And so as this begins, we take on what Alvin Toffler. He wrote a book about it, and this is one of the first books that I really delved into, that I would say was specifically more like the 1984 idea of there being a script, that we're in some sort of scripted reality. Because Alvin Toffler, he was not the first to actually say it. That would have been, I forget the name of the guy now. Neil Postman. He's the one that originally came up with the term in 1963, along with Charles Weingartner, and he used the term future shock, and Alvin Toffler wrote a book about it. With the premise being, of course, is that book came out in 1970, and the premise of this book being then that the amount of change being thrown at us is so much that people go into a state of really, again, either denial or this over-control mechanism. This is what they develop these unintended consequences, right, and these unhealthy coping mechanisms. And he popularized the term information overload. And so it's not just now the change in society, but it's the change literally in information that causes the mind to overload and become incapable of managing this flow of information. And it specifically shows up in a variety of areas, especially concerning relationships. And relationships become suddenly, were increasingly more shallow, less based around family and more based around what becomes then transient work, because the nature of professions change, professions become short-lived, and you lose the long-term skills and the nature of identity very quickly in a society that has embraced future shock. And so future shock is the ideal platform on which to overlay something like 1984 / Brave New World. And it's been very clearly laid down before us. And all of these things, the common denominator amongst these books is they all serve, or at least we're told, as a warning. Right, we're told that these authors are warning about the potential negative effects, the unintended consequences of these things coming to fruition. When instead, oh fuck, that's good. When instead, what we've got here is a brokenness of society that seems, if you look at the direct outlay, right, and you start looking at the deployment of technologies and when this began to happen, it seems as if, and you can find many of these things at researchgate.net, when you find, go through the kind of the timeline and look through the history of technology, what we seem to see is a strong correlation between technology and changes in time, in sociology, and what happens. And each one at an incrementally increasing and dynamically growing in orders of magnitude. And so what we see is that this information is being foisted on us. And again, if you go back up and look at this, right, and get this premise that the powers that be, right, doing these studies understand and know that the more things change, no, the more they stay the same, no, the more things change, the more people cannot manage that change, and it makes them go into a state of denial. Right, they go into this again hypnotic state, zombie mode. So would you want to, prevent people? I mean, hey, look, we have a pandemic right now. They're telling you to stay home. Right, they're telling you. In fact, as far as I can tell, who's in the chat, conversation between he and I from April, got pulled down when we were simply saying that whatever they're telling you, the nature of this pandemic is, the source is compromised. Therefore, be suspicious, and that what they're telling you is a lie. That seems pretty rational and reasonable, right? It got pulled down, that episode, for danger to human health, right? So I think that's all three that I've done now with, as far as I can tell, that got pulled. So you'll learn your lesson someday. And this is in part why I try to give you these bits and pieces. I am not specifically, I don't know how to put it, like a truther channel, in that I don't see my role as exposing necessarily all the lies or breaking down all these things, because there are plenty of people, again, doing a great job of that. But moreover, I would say that it would be much more my desire to send you looking for yourself, right? That these are ideas that you can peruse at your own leisure, and know for yourself what it is that you think and believe based on the evidence. So these are just some things to look into. But certainly, there is again an enormous amount of evidence, and we have that easily available. This idea of future shock, industrial disease, being known about and being considered an incredible danger to society. And at exactly the same time that they pushed the gas down and introduced things like Star Trek and sci-fi based movies of every kind, at every point along the way where they say, hey, these things could be potentially hazardous to society and human development, do they restrict their use or consider the ethics of it? No, they change the narrative to tell you how wonderful and how amazing these technologies are, and how great these things are for you. Right. So one of the things that I found humorous when I was looking at the nature of change here, like go back to the screen. You had it up for a while here. Let's find that screen again. One moment, please. Here we go. Right? Coins as opposed to paper currency, right? So change also dealing with coins. So they're going to change coins to electronic currency. So just want to point that out that here we have death coming around the corner. When you see that, I think we'll be very aware that, as Crow says, that's the biggest drop into the loss of freedoms ever. Anyway, we see that coming, which is nice. So, but here's the point that I want to make in all this, right? Is that, well, one, I think, again, preaching to the choir here, what we know for certain is that those powers in charge who seem to control everything, and they keep their narrative consistent, right? You wouldn't have, again, fact checkers if you didn't have a need to control that narrative. I have said before that tyranny does not cut the tongue out of liars. That indignity is left for those who speak truth, and that truth represents a danger to their rule and their power through deception. So when there is censorship, there is a need to control that narrative. And when there's a need to control the narrative, that means that it's propaganda and lies. Pretty straight line. There you go. You missed the fake space and the dinosaurs. Yeah, I understand, right? It's a good story. It's a great story. But here's again what I want to share, right? Is that what we have before us is an opportunity. An opportunity, as they're seeing it, is to grab the reins of power yet more tightly. And we all know that what they're doing here with the Crenani has nothing to do about health. It has entirely to do with grabbing the reins of power yet more tightly, and even more separating what we would say the wheat from the chaff, or separating the sheep from the goats. As it says in Scripture, that we would call it a litmus test. And I think that they think that this is for their purposes so they can more easily identify who we are. And certainly we have self-identified with this. It's one of the original topics that I very first went on Crow 777 radio about, right? The nature of the surveillance state and what's happening. And the danger, I guess you would say, that presents to you. And that's how most of us got acquainted, I think. But ultimately, right, the nature of what they're doing with that information is to create, again, the simulated world that they live in, that they want you to live in. And by simulating it in advance and running all these programs, they can, at least to their satisfaction, believe that they can control your reaction to it. They present all of these scenarios, and then they try to run those scenarios out, which is exactly what they tell you quantum computers are trying to do, is run multiple scenarios with these qubits so they could overlay realities on top of one another, and to try to best understand, the best way to control these things. And they're telling us that they have a very high success rate, upwards of 99%, and if they say that, it's like 99.99995 percent accuracy in their prediction rates for most people. And I consider again that we are outside most people, and I have said again over and over that the best way to foil that system is to simply again connect with the Creator and His creation, and come from a place of love. And when you do that, that foils their system. You're no longer acting in accordance with their program. You've gone off script. Now, again, is that going to cause you to self-identify? Of course. That puts you immediately in the crosshairs. My wife and I joke all the time. All the time. We do. We joke about, we talk directly to the NSA guy who is, he's been assigned to listen to our nonsense. Now, we know it's AI mostly, but we make jokes and talk directly to him and, try to make him go, oh, man, you didn't just say that. Yeah, we did. So we make it a running joke, because I have always known, or at least all my adult life, due to, again, circumstances, that everything that we do is watched very closely by the last people you would want to know. There's really nothing you can do to stop it. And the more you try to do to prevent it, the more you simply put a big red flag on you and say, hey, I don't want you to look at this. And they're like, oh, what is that you got going? So I just have always lived my life with the understanding of that, and to try to, again, just to be aware. And I know that they know, and they know that I know. And so we're, sort of in that little standoff, I suppose, is where we're at. But ultimately, those things aren't going to change because, from my perspective, and what I've come to, is that again, this is not a physical battle that we're going to fight with technology. This is a spiritual battle that we're going to fight with our soul. And that means our approach and the way that we think and the way that we understand and see things, and that we're sharing this experience together. And so when we see these things around us, again, you don't have to be afraid. And one of the things, and again, not to get too far over into my typical Sunday streams, but one of the things that I have seen that is so delightful and such a powerful statement and confirmation of these things is to see that those who have from my Sunday streams responded to and asked for prayer in their lives, it has worked powerfully. And that is, I think, again, powerful confirmation to me that this is not a battle that can be fought with the standard tools of the trade, whether that be guns and ammunition or the more modern technology approach. I think that, again, trying to play this game on their battlefield puts you at a disadvantage. But what puts them at a disadvantage is that they are broken spiritually or dead, and we are not. And that gives us an enormous advantage to what is going on here. Do they have the numbers of the robot zombie army in their favor? Yeah, of course they do. But again, just like us, we were once them. Some of those may turn. But ultimately, again, if we trust that there is a creator and that that he's good and the plan has been known already, I got nothing to be afraid of. So I keep saying, don't threaten me with a good time, right? You're going to make threats against my person. Yeah, I'm ready. So anyway, what I want to get back to, right, is this idea that if you look around you, one of the things that you see is that people are surrounded by and inundated with change, constant change. They cannot, there is no time to breathe in between each event. And they keep it this way. If you just monitor the news, I don't recommend it, because if you even if you don't believe it, as if you do as I do, and just keep an eye on it to see what's going on, it's still stressful in not in what they're saying, but the fact that so many people believe it and they respond to it as though it's real. That's the frightening part, is that people take it in as though it's true, and that's a difficult. And they react that way when you go out and you interact with them in the IRL, right, in real life. When you go out there and see them, they are behaving as though that is the real world, and can be very unsettling indeed. But again, helpful to understand that they are caught up in really what is literally kind of a psychosis. It's very much akin to sleep deprivation, right? So when you don't get enough sleep over a number of days, about 4 days is where the line really is, you really start to go psychotic. You begin to have hallucinations. And if you go about 2 weeks, it can be deadly. Literally die from lack of sleep. And so it is, unremarkable, I think, really, to see the state of where society is when they knowingly have introduced. I mean, it's just like them putting poison into the water supply. They know. It's not as if they don't know what it does. It's not. It's not like, oh, we didn't know. It's done for a very specific purpose, in the same way that everything that you see in the media that hits a media cycle and gets put on repeat, right? If it goes, quote, goes viral, there's a reason for that. It's not by mistake. And so you can keep your eye on those things and better understand the nature of what they want you to believe. But again, I don't recommend digging deep into media, simply because it's going to have a negative effect on you. I'm not immune to it, even though I know it's all nonsense. But it still has, I get a contact high from it. I don't know. It's a contact grossness. I feel like I have to take a shower afterwards. It's pretty gross. But ultimately, what I do it for is just to keep an eye on what is going on. And there are people in my social media, oh, how did that get there? Oh, dear. little Pavlovian slip there. Oh dear, coffee. I love coffee. There are people in my social media timeline who I have kept there for no other reason. They're like the hardest lefty left and completely programmed by the system. And they're there for the specific purpose of showing me exactly what I already know, which is how they behave at the introduction of each new piece of the narrative. And I can accurately predict almost without exception what they're going to say, how they're going to respond to each new thing that we're told in the media. They go out on the social justice warrior virtue signaling rampage, and I can predict it with a fair bit of accuracy. I know exactly how it's going to happen. And even them, I have to snooze from time to time and go, oh, no, I can't even look at it. It's so gross. It's just so gross. I can't even. Oh, dear, with those guys. But ultimately, I think when we look at these things a little bit closer, guys, it's helpful, I think, to understand is what you're looking at in terms of those people that you care about or that you don't care about, right? The ones who have declared themselves your enemies. Just kind of piggybacking off what we said last week with Beth, these relationships, whether, again, those are coworkers, whether it's family, whether it's your spouse, right? Or it's the mask hole, right, down at the post office who's yelling at you because you need to wear a mask, right? Oh dear. But I think it's helpful to understand where they're at and where they're coming from and why they behave the way they do. Most of it's driven from fear. But there is a bit of disassociation from reality. They really are not in a state of really cognitive perception. And what they do perceive is all inaccurate. It's in error, and it's an illusion by design. I think intellectually, we all know that. I think to a degree, there's that 18-inch mile between your head and your heart where we intellectually understand that they are completely programmed and they can't help it. Emotionally, I think it's difficult to deal with them when they're coming at you, right? And they're growling at you and acting like a complete asshole for no reason other than you're trying to tell them the truth. That's a difficult proposition. And I just that is, I think, where we could use a bit of help in better managing our own perceptions, so that we can better relate to these people and not become. I don't want to turn into that same thing. The quote Christian has become, that they have their own sense of condescending opprobrium that they put on people that are in error and don't have the truth, and you're going to burn in hell. I mean, I see sometimes essentially the same thing coming from truthers toward the community around them. When we know they're sheep, right? And when it is easy to get really frustrated with them, and just want to throat punch them. They're idiots, right? And man, I know it better than anybody. I think I've always had a hard time with willful ignorance and just willful stupidity. I mean, it's right there in front of you, and you not only don't want to see it, but you're going to fight against it. It's just irritating, and especially when they got to come at you because you're saying something that is in conflict with what they believe, and it's frustrating beyond belief. So, but we got some of these people we have to deal with, right? They're our family, or parents or coworkers, boss, right? That we have to deal with these people for reasons, right? And it becomes a real challenge. And this is where I'm hoping to kind of tilt a little bit today, is to help understand a bit better, right? The nature of what's happened is this psychotic break from reality. Again, I don't know if I want to treat them with allopathic medicine, right? Give them antipsychotics, although lithium might be helpful in some cases. Oh dear. But no, really, it does give me a sense of compassion, I think, for most of them, even even those I know I have to just let go and wash my hands of. I know I can't affect it, and I know I can't change where they're at. But it does help it be quite a bit easier that I don't have to fight back. Right? It's just not necessary. And I know that, it's an argument I'm not going to win because they're not interested in reason or rationality or facts. The ones who claim science are the ones who don't have any. Right? And they call you a science denier. And little do they know that what they're claiming as science is complete and utter pseudoscience from one end to the other, start to finish. It's just nonsense. And they won't hear any of it. And it's right there. So again, it's just I tell this to you not because I think you don't know already, but to help you better appreciate, right, the nature of what's going on around us. Is they simply can't see it. They are under this spell, and the spell has been foisted on them intentionally. And so it's just one part of many. All of these are pieces to the puzzle, right? So if you go back and you look at the whole thing, everything from cosmology to history to the nature of fiat currency in the system, to how school works and how programming works there, to songs, to movies, to television shows, to just all pop culture. Everything is designed to build and develop this state of mindless, just giving of their will. Where they're convinced that they're worthless. Everyone seems to have imposter syndrome. They know that they don't really know, but the only way to pretend like they do is to, act like they do know and be able to run the technology that gives them the answer. So as long as they can run the technology that gives them the answer, they're satisfied with the answer, no matter what the answer is. So even if the answer is 2 + 2 = 11, they're going to defend that because they push the right buttons to get there, and you're a dummy if you can't do that. Right? Everybody believes that they're smarter than the next guy, despite all the evidence to the contrary. They just, again, it's the way the mind works. So there is no way out for most people. And this is why, again, I come back to you cannot drag them kicking and screaming to where you are. All you can really do is to be the best version of you possible. And from my perspective, the best way to get there is by having direct communion, contact, and relationship with your Creator. It is not found in knowledge of anything, whether that is the sky clock or alchemy or occult information or history. All those things are good information, but that will not fundamentally change you. And simply having tools doesn't make you a craftsman, or having a pencil and a ruler doesn't make you an architect, or a hammer, right? Those things don't make you an architect. So what does? Well, go to the architect, right? When you start claiming that the answers to everything are in blueprints, if you only understood blueprints, you'd know the secrets to the world. Well, you'd know those blueprints, but what about all the other buildings, right? If you understood the nature of physics, then you'd understand what happens and why engineering is necessary, right, to make blueprints so you could become an architect. So go to the architect and better understand the architect, and then you can read all the blueprints. Right? It's just, again, information is great. It's good information. So whether that information is about chi or any of these truth systems that we've been introduced to over time, great. I mean, information is great. But I think anything that gets between you and the Creator, it, again, puts you into, it separates you from the Creator. When you go get exactly the information you need from the source. Anything else that puts you on a detour is a detour. But right? And so if you keep running after knowledge and more knowledge and more knowledge and more knowledge, I'll tell you this, that from my experience, all that knowledge will get you more knowledge. But every question answered leads to 10 more unanswered questions. And if you get addicted to trying to get those questions answered, hope defers makes the heart grow sick, and you will become obsessed with it, and it will make you crazy, and you can never get to the end, ever, ever. Everything goes fractal. All the information, every piece of, every discipline of study ever goes entirely fractal. And you can never get to the end of it. And so if that is your measure for success, where are you going to go? Right? So I liken it to, again, if the measure of success is jumping across the Grand Canyon, something that can help you jump 15% more is awesome. But you're still going to splat at the bottom. The only way to get across is to get a ticket on the airplane. So there you have that. Let's see. So with that, there was more, but I think that covers the basics, right? I think that covers the basics of what I wanted to hit this morning with the idea of future shock. It's Future Shock is a book from 1970 from Alvin Toffler. He wrote a couple more, including The Third Wave. I recommend them. You can probably find them online in PDF form for free. It was required reading back in the day, but a lot of information there, and all of them are, to me, I think just they're scripts. They introduce these ideas that any of these that come out to be warnings, right? That they say are warnings about the future state of mankind. You could just read that is about, this is a script for what you should be looking for and what's upcoming, and they will use some of the same language. The fact that you're suddenly seeing this word "dark winter" thrown around is not a mistake. The number of people and new normal, right? They try to normalize these situations. So when we put them all together, this is what I'm trying to do here is to, again, give you pieces of the puzzle that you can kind of look at and put together your own puzzle picture, right? What is it? How does it comport with what you see? And trying to put the picture together, because that is what I think that we have an opportunity to do with all of this. I certainly don't know all the puzzle pieces, and I don't even have the edges together. But if I can find a piece that seems to make sense, I'll throw it out there and go, hey, look at this. What do you think of this? And these are, to me, these intellectual bits and the psychological bits of what they've done to get people to become compliant and to embrace their captor, their oppressor, in this enormous Stockholm syndrome is remarkable. It's brilliant but devious, and so anything that we can do to better understand that, I think, is helpful. But certainly for any of the other aspects as well. And again, I'm big into understanding the nature of history and the nature of things. So don't get me wrong. If don't anybody take that I'm against the sky clock or against alchemy. That would be silly. Those are important sources of information. I just don't think they're the pinnacle of information. Each is one side, and you can get information from a lot of different places. But why I always say, go to the source. If you want information, go to the source, and I think you can't go wrong there. And it also gets me out of the picture, so I don't have to be responsible for it. Right? Go to the source and get what you get there. So that having been said, I appreciate everybody coming along today, and that is, I think, what I have to share is that we have been, all of us, put in almost impossible circumstances for all of our lives, certainly, and many generations prior to us. It has been many generations long, devious, evil system that has been wrapped around us. And the very fact that you and I and others are beginning to awaken, not just in part, but to a large degree, we understand, certainly not if all the truth, that everything is a lie. And we can begin to tear those things apart, at least enough that we can better understand how to walk forward from here. And I love the fact, and I've said this so many times, it's becoming a bit cliche, but I think it's worth saying again, that we have all come from very different and very diverse backgrounds and very different journeys along the road to get here. And the fact that we are all ended up in the same parking lot of this building, no matter what route we took to get here, is remarkable and tells me a good deal about what may be inside. So I'm very excited to see what comes of this. And the times, they are a-changing. I think that's certainly observable. What comes next? Fuck, man, I don't know. We can all hypothesize, speculate a bit. I think some things have been laid out on the table as being likely, just by the nature of the fact that they telegraphed them for such a long period of time. Some of them may be distractions and diversions, just like Q was. Again, fuck, I don't know. So there's a lot of stuff out there. We talk about those every week on Secrets of Saturn and other places. A lot of people doing a lot of effort to get the information out there. So kudos to everyone who does good quality research, and kudos to all of you who sort through it. Many of you listen to much more material than I find time to, but I support this community as best I can. And I love you guys. You are become my family. And I'm so ridiculously thankful for all of you for not only joining me and becoming a part of the community that I'm with, but just for everything that you bring. And I love getting the emails and messages and chats from you guys is just amazing. And I read back through the chats on every show. I don't listen to the show. I do listen to the noodles a little bit to see if I come across anything I like there. Sometimes I do. But most often I'm just looking for the chat to see what you guys are saying, because I don't catch it usually during the program itself. And I feel awkward saying show, because it just doesn't feel like I'm putting on a show. Just like it feels like we're getting together around my living room. If I had a bigger living room. But you guys, yeah, I love you. And genuinely, I'm just so pleased to have you as part of my life, and that you're here and I come to know you. It's amazing. And I sense that we have some interesting, challenging, but amazing times coming up ahead of us. So it's... I'm excited. I really am. I am not in any way scared or put out like many people are. It is, I think, from time to time unnerving to not know what's coming next. But that's part of the, part of the joy of it. It becomes a bit like riding a roller coaster. It's pretty exciting, a little bit scary, but again, I know the architect, so I'm not afraid. I'm ready for whatever comes next, even though I'm not at all ready for what comes next. I hope that makes sense. But you guys are amazing, and you're awesome, and I have genuine love for each of you. Thank you so much for coming along. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll do Ancient Wisdom for a Modern World. That'll be pretty brief, I think, and then I'll be headed out to Ceiling Fan Man's house, and I will probably do Sola Scriptura as sort of scriptural, and likely from Ceiling Fan Man's secret location at his secret bunker somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. So that'll be a lot of fun. So look forward to that. That'll be tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. And if not, well, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, so again, thanks everybody for coming along today. It's always a pleasure and a delight. I'll leave you, again, there's, I'm so out of stuff to play here, but this is 1993, I think, is what this is from. This again, myself with Joe Ray and Jim Rogers, called More Than I've Ever Seen. And I'll leave you with this. And again, love you guys terribly much. And I would always love to hear your comments and suggestions and ideas. And well, again, you can reach out to me. All the ways are listed in the description to this broadcast and more. So I'll talk to you guys again soon. Thanks. Oh, look, it decided not to do it. Let's see if it'll do it now. Hey, there it is. All right, guys, take care.
Hunger will not subside.
destiny. I hear the thunder's coming, bringing me to my knees, like nothing I've ever seen. In my mind I hear the voices calling. In my mind I see the planets collide. In my mind I feel the end beginning. It's like waking up from a dream. It's more than I've ever seen. Shadows fall like angels' tears, leaves darkness on every